So let's start with you, Subho, perhaps. Many of you will, of course, know Nokia, an early pioneer that's pivoted over the years, more than once, I should say. And now you have an interesting perspective on AI and the powering of the technology for it. What do you think about some of the ideas we heard from our friend at NVIDIA, which has got their finger in just about every major hyperscale data center out there? Do you have a different point of view, or are you making some different bets on where you see the energy needs going?
Thank you, Vijay. You mentioned last night how you miss the old Nokia 8810. I'm going to pivot from there.
The best cell phone I ever had was the late 8810. I wish I had it again. Yeah.
I'm going to pivot from that era. That if the world of data and connectivity were still the same, and Josh painted a good picture of the future and what's happening at the cutting edge today, but if we are to run the world the same way as it was before, and it's easy to forget how life was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the current AI supercycle would not go anywhere. So the reason I'm mentioning this, so I very much agree to what has been discussed. My argument here is to make AI sustainable, bigger is not necessarily better. And the reason I say that is what we have to understand is obviously AI today is produced by very few companies on earth and consumed by few, but it's going to get, multiplied by millions as more industries, more consumers use that AI.
That's why we have big tech building hyperscale data centers and large language models.
Yes.
Now, your vision is the opposite of that, is that right?
My vision is what we really need to make happen is two things. First is we have to remember when new technologies come in, we in this technology world love to talk about the shiny new things, but it takes years, just like the discussion around power. It takes years for modern technology to infiltrate and actually modernize what's out there. US has more than 5,000 data centers, 10 times than rest of the world. But a lot of those data center infrastructure are not going to get modernized tomorrow with all the shiny technology we are seeing. So first, we need to make these data centers efficient so that these data centers consume less power as AI gets processed, because the inherent nature of AI processing is more. The second part I would then, and stop there for the moment, is I want to argue that we need to be conscious of what happens when the AI workload leaves the data center and reaches you and I. That's where the role of power networking comes in. That's what Nokia is working hard on. How can you reduce the energy consumption of the networks moment you go outside the box, to use Josh's language, of the server, and when it hits the consumer traffic and the enterprise traffic? So take, for example...
A big share of the pie?
It is a big share.
Of the energy pie?
It's today less share of the energy consumption pie. Our studies have shown by 2033. So today, roughly, there is about 900 exabyte. 1 exabyte is about a billion gigabyte of data per month consumption of all the traffics that you see in the networks, your mobile and everything else. By 2033, it's going to go 4x. Remember, on a huge base of today, it's going to go 4x. Of that 4x, 33% is going to come from AI. So we really need to be mindful of how we handle AI the moment it comes out of the inferencing. And I'm going to come back later about some ideas.
Those are ratios of the data, not the energy consumed in transporting it or connecting it.
That's right. But you can see the equivalent rise in energy consumption unless we handle it at the moment. So I can come back later about what I mean by why bigger is not necessarily the better way to go about it. So I'm arguing for a distributed power of inferencing and managing AI workload, not necessarily just at the data center, but across the world, and being smart about how we design existing data centers and how we distribute data center traffic.
That's very interesting. So I'm glad you're getting towards the world of small. Now, is this analogous to the arguments made for edge computing versus centralized computing, or is there something different here?
Partly, yes. So one of the things, and this is probably familiar with most of you, that I think where a lot of the work, including with NVIDIA and many of the panelists and other data center customers, I met some of our other customers like CoreWeave, who's building a lot of data centers across Europe and Asia today. A lot of the work today is really going at how to think differently about inferencing, training and inferencing AI workload, not just within the data centers, but at the edge. Because if you think about the real I was going to say fun, but the real joy of economic growth will come when AI is being used by very physical industries today, ports, mines, logistics. I mean, for sure, media, finance, tech companies are going to use much more AI, will going to be the early adopters. But the real economic growth is going to come from physical industries. These physical industries need to have the ability to have their machines, and they interact to the internet through the machines, is going to be able to process at a very low power those AI. And that's where the power of high quality, low latency, superior networks that can actually, the edge network that is not ready today to be there to process AI at the edge of the machine. And I would argue in the next 5 to 6 years, a lot of work is underway with many players in the ecosystem, including NVIDIA, us, and many partners, that when we reach that moment, that's where the true explosion of AI as a general purpose technology will come to fore.
It sounds to me that your argument is consistent with the big thesis. It's not little replaces big, it's little comes on top of or in addition to big. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
Okay, so you're actually going to consume even more power, just every little bit will use very little, and then you'll do it efficiently.
Yeah.
And more benefits will be gained by society because it's dispersed across industries, as it were.
Yeah.
And geographies. Okay, I get the point. Let's see where we go next. Ed, what do you make of this argument? You heard, obviously, our friend on the video, Mr. Chipman, but we also hear Mr. Small Energy Man. Where do you come into this conversation?
Listen, I, from what I see with our customers, and I think they're both right. I think that I don't think inference is going to get...
People who don't know, tell the audience who your customers are.
So my customers are mostly federal and enterprise, global enterprise. So Metel is a communication solutions provider. Think of us like an AT&T or a Verizon, but we're very niche just to business and federal government. So actually DOE, USDA, EPA, customers of mine. So we provide the networks for this. So we actually see more and more. You mentioned edge compute. We've been threatening about edge compute now for how many years?
Yeah.
Since probably 2017. Finally, it's happening. And you're starting to see very big players, Walmart, for example, putting NVIDIA chips and cards at their stores to have local AI presence. I think that's going to proliferate. And to Vanessa's point earlier, I think the grid becomes even much more important. Because I think that the big AI data centers, they're all powering themselves today. I mean, Elon's Memphis data center, I think it's got 38 methane generators now. It's like 450 megawatts that he does himself. And I was at a conference last week with...
He didn't sign any net zero pledge for that one.
No, he did not.
He's got the dirtiest generators possible as quickly as possible and threw them up there.
Yeah, and Stargate, for example, they put out there that, they're in Abilene for the renewable power and all the wind generated power. And I saw them speak last week and they were talking about their methane generators that are on order and how they're going to, provide 1 gigawatt with those. So I think...
Although they're using some captured methane as well.
They are.
I have an environmental claim on that one. I intend to go out there and kick the tires in a few weeks. So I'll report back in The Economist.
It's amazing. It's amazing how fast they're actually working. But I think everywhere. I think we're just scratching the surface of this. And I think all of us have a lot of mistakes to make along the way. And I think power is going to be the unfortunate target for us, or victim of us learning what to do. Because I think all of us as an industry, the power is just happening now. I don't think training stops. I think training continues indefinitely. I do think an inference will become more and more important towards the edge. I mean, you just think of, driverless vehicles, and we're talking, as 5G, 6G starts to happen, I think that power is just all distributed. So I think it all grows.
I do want to inject a note of skepticism here. We've all lived in this room anyway through the internet age, right? And we all remember the early days of Google and Hotmail and all of that. Maybe not some of the younger people about Hotmail, but anyway, we get the idea. There was a time when the internet was new, and there was a similar kind of concern about energy at that time. And a rival publication that shall remain nameless ran a very prominent set of articles claiming that what is this internet? It doesn't seem to do very much good, but it's going to consume half the coal in the world. And you'll know from the statistic I've already cited, the last 20 years in the US have actually seen flat electricity. The utilities have not grown in electricity. And part of that is because we've gotten data centers that are much more efficient. We had a gentleman from Schneider who spoke up. I went to a Schneider facility in Italy where liquid cooling is one of the advances that they're doing in conjunction with NVIDIA, next generation. And there was massive efficiency gains in how we, quote unquote, manufacture the internet in conventional data centers and cloud, and similar gains to be had not only in chip, but balance of plant and cooling and HVAC. And the way coding is done in a very sloppy, quick, let's get it out the doorway. You can certainly code much more efficiently, which we're working on, including AI doing the coding perhaps already or in future. So when you actually take account the likely learnings that are going to come, we might find ourselves saying, why did we think we were going to double and triple electricity consumption? It didn't even happen with the internet, which was the most transformative thing in the last 30 years, as predicted, as it was originally predicted. We could be seeing an efficiency revolution coming.
We could, but you can.
Anyway, what do you think?
I would add to your mix. So yes, last 20 years, the network traffic has grown by 15x. We don't realize it every day, but with due respect to cat lovers, all the cat videos that we uploaded actually had a huge impact on the network traffic. What we don't realize often is, right now, every millisecond, let's check phone. Every 7 milliseconds, your phone is sending a signal to the base station out there just to let them know that both of them are alive. That each of that signal consumes energy. If we did not, the collective industry did all the innovations that we did, then by now, internet would have been, you would have not, used internet in the same way as you would do today. There was no possibility to power internet. So sometimes what we forget is we have this tremendous ability to have distributed the power of innovation across the world, and a long way that we have come in handling the internet. I'm not suggesting that the past performance is an indicator of the future performance. We have a different set of technology today, also because we are at the edge of the Moore's law, in which in terms of you can get lesser efficiency than what you have got before. But I'm also optimistic that some of the principles that we have learned, that for example, the entire global network traffic today switches off at any point in time. Take 5G or 4G, only 17% of a network is alive. I mean, we are right now in Manhattan. We're going to probably go home by the evening, but the network, if new AI innovations are not in place, they would still send signals assuming there are people here. If we run data centers in the same way, continuously powering data centers throughout the day when inferencing will not happen, we are going to run out of energy.
Sure.
But you can extrapolate these learnings and innovation from what has happened in the internet era and do it better in the AI era and distribute it, to my earlier argument. I think there is hope. But in the short term, and that may be the topic that John will talk about, we do need better energy.
Exactly. So in the longer term, we can expect these changes to happen within the context of dynamic systems, where there's response, where we'll have innovations, we'll have substitution, of course, and we'll have the Jevons paradox, meaning the rebound effect as well. So these things tend to happen in a dynamic way, but broadly speaking, favoring efficiency is what we've seen in the past. However, there's no question in the short to medium term, we're going to use more energy. We're already beginning to. I was just at the leading utility conference of the year a couple of days ago in New Orleans, the Edison Electric Institute, where all the private sector utilities get together to, normally it's a glum meeting. This year they were, raising their hurricanes with the governor of Louisiana and talking about that big meta project because energy, happy days are here again for the utility industry, right? And among other things was the discussion about a revival of nuclear. So I'm very keen to get John's perspective. John, obviously, Nuclear Energy Institute, you represent and advocate for sensible use of civilian nuclear power. Can you tell us, are you doing the Snoopy dance over at your office? What's going on over there?
Well, to go from a Biden administration that was advocating for tripling the production of nuclear power in the U.S. to a Trump administration that just signed an executive order saying, well, they want to quadruple the use of nuclear energy by mid-century, it does show that there's a lot of interest and a lot of opportunity in the sector. We are seeing utilities planning for adding nuclear capacity. We're also starting to see some of the big energy users trying to figure out, are there ways that they can directly deploy these technologies as well? So there is quite a bit of opportunity for new nuclear. I do expect to see things like the small modular reactor technologies that OPG up in Canada is deploying with the GE Hitachi design. Expect to see those move forward, and they're planning on having that online in 2030. So the SMR technologies in some of these advanced reactors should be able to shrink the deployment timelines. Maybe not to the 4 or 5 years for gas, but you're starting to get in that neighborhood. I do expect to see more of the large plants like the Westinghouse AP1000s that were built in the state of Georgia. I think there'll be more of those both in the U.S. and abroad. And we'll start to see more microreactors used as well. These kind of single-digit to teens, in terms of megawatts of output. Those have a role to play in more distributed applications. And so we're expecting to see growth across all of those sectors.
So I want to preface my comment by saying that The Economist has long supported nuclear power. As a carbon-free source of energy, and also one when we run statistics every few years we run the same chart that shows debts per gigawatt of energy produced across different types of energy, and people have in their perception somehow because of 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or Fukushima, imagine nuclear is actually the number of debts from coal is extraordinarily high, an order of magnitude and more higher, and from gas as well, somewhere below that, than those from renewables and nuclear, which is extremely low in terms of energy produced compared to the loss of life or even other kinds of comorbidities and so on. So I say this, I'm praising you before I damn you, as it were. Show me the nuclear power plant that's been built in the free world that meaning not Russia, China, or by the companies of those from those countries, that has been on time and on budget in the last 20 years.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because if you look at the experience in places like Japan when they were building advanced boiling water reactors at scale, so this goes into the 90s and the aughts, they were going from first concrete pour to fuel loading in those plants, which are the big milestones in a nuclear construction project, in just over 3 years. All right, so the South Koreans have done that more recently.
That's the one example, right? The Korean, the UAE, the Abu Dhabi
UAE,
reactor,
but even when they were building
quite efficiently by the Korean contractor, that's an example.
Even when they were building them domestically, and in the U.S., if you go back into the 70s before we had 3 Mile Island and had some delays as a result of changing safety regulations, et cetera, we were getting quite good at it. The thing we haven't done in most of the Western world is we haven't built them at scale. We haven't had a steady deployment of new build, right? If we get to that program, what you find is you get more efficient, right? And because the first few of a
learning by doing.
That's exactly right. And you got to build up a supply chain and a workforce.
Who know what to,
all the things that go along. And our nuclear Navy has learned this decades ago.
Right.
They don't go order 1 or 2 new reactors. They order 20. Right, and they expect the last one to come off your last submarine to come out of the shipyard to cost half what the first one.
Just in the interest of time, John, let's fast forward to how do we make it real, the nuclear revival that has been advocated by 2 administrations of very different persuasions, right? A good policy support is there, exhortations, even talk about using AI to speed up the regulations and so on. But in practice, when I look at Georgia, we know the cost overruns on Vogtle. We know the number of years that it took. That's our last baseline in America. That's a brand new baseline, just opened last year, as it were, the final opening. And so if I'm coming off that low base, what are 3 things that the U.S. has to do to kickstart and accelerate the process so that there's a chance to have a nuclear revival?
Yeah, so one, we can't go backwards on the policy progress we've made. So as the Senate and House consider budget reconciliation,
so don't kill the subsidies.
Don't or the loan programs office, right? Those things matter. get more efficient in the regulatory space. And we've seen things like the Advance Act and also the executive orders, which are giving that a real push. And we've seen some good progress.
Is that just about sort of using AI to get through the red tape, or is it that we're regulating incorrectly? That is, the radiation standards are incorrect? Like, is there something deeper here?
It's a combination of things. There's process built in that doesn't need to be there. Things take longer than they need to. And so, fortunately, we've seen the NRC recognize some of those things and start to peel some of those things out of the process. And so the recent results have been a lot better, but there's still a ways to go. And I'd say the third thing is we need to catalyze the formation of order books, right? So that it's not just going and telling us a supply chain vendor that, all right, we want to order 2. We're going to order 20. So you can go ahead and tool up and you can sell these things to us at a lower price. That's going to help these.
So there are companies, the nuclear company, I think, just came out of stealth, and they're trying to bundle these orders, the order book concept. I'd mentioned Google earlier doing a order for 6 SMRs. So there's some moves in this direction, but when I actually look below, the headlines, as it were, the idea of bundling 6 orders from utilities sounds great, but what I'm told by the utilities is none of us wants to be utility number 1, because they all have to have their own regulators and their customers. They'll be utility number 6 in a group of 6. They don't want to take the risk of 1. So it's about cost sharing or dealing with the risk of cost overrun. Is that something that government has to do? What's the blunt answer?
If government were to do it, it would really help catalyze that formation of order books and move us forward. Senator Jim Risch from Idaho deserves a great deal of credit for introducing called the Accelerating Reliable Capacity Act, which would do just that. So I'm optimistic that in this Congress we'll see some progress on that front.
Okay. A quick question and a quick answer, maybe, if anyone wants to tackle our AI energy fest that we're having here. If not, that's fine. I'm happy to. Oh, there we go. There's a quick question there.
Yeah. In the lead up, Alistair Bourbon from Madison Energy Infrastructure.
Thank you.
So in the lead up to bringing on nuclear and larger loads and cleaner loads for hyperscale data centers, how do you think about, especially in the edge compute world, leveraging distributed energy resources as a bridge to that next generation?
Who wants to take that?
I can start off. I think it's critical. DERs need to scale. Right now, there are several progresses in DERs, but the technology, I would say it's an area where Europe has made significant progress and US needs to catch up. I would also add that it's important for DER technologies not to think about the traditional, let's say, home charger versus the grid and the sort of large sort of energy sources and how you can dynamically share resource with the grid, but also, non-traditional sources. One of the things we are working on is this millions of mobile base stations that are all around them. They're not consuming energy. How can they send back the energy to the grid when it's not needed, and all sorts of things. So there is a lot of progress. I would double down. I was going to mention that the role of DER in an equivalence within a data center and the grid is equally important, because you're not using AI inferencing and training throughout the day on a 24/7 cycle in a data center. So yes, I think it is critical.
Yeah, and I think as edge compute grows, me as a carrier where I have to go deploy this equipment and manage it for my customers, we are more and more getting involved in discussions with their infrastructure folks on power and how much power they have, where it is, and that determines where we're putting this equipment these days.
There's a question that's come in on the Slido. Do any of you think bioenergy could play a role, since we're seeing more and more data centers being proposed for remote or rural areas?
I don't have a point of view.
I don't have a point of view on that. I just know that you see it with all the methane generators, for example, that Elon Musk example. I don't think they have the time to wait
for the biofuels to come up. Yeah. Let's see, there is a fuel challenge, but maybe there's, if the appetite grows and the location is suitable. We do see, for example, the renewable fuels industry taking off, mainly because of California mandates, but we do see that, so maybe there'll be some sort of policy angle that encourages that. We're just about out of time, so if we are all ready, it is time to take a coffee break. So I encourage you all to go out there, mix, mingle, meet somebody new who you don't know yet. That's my challenge to you. Shake hands, introduce yourself, and get to know someone new. Thank you all very much, and thank my panelists.